Hey, everybody, and we are live for a quick 20-minute session today with Lucy Robinson to talk recruiter tips. Thanks for joining us, Lucy.
Thank you for having me again. 2 weeks in a row, Mike.
We're going to try to do this regularly, at least once weekly. I think a lot of you also hopefully enjoy the back and forth and different perspectives between Lucy and I on just candidate engagement applications, everything else like that. Just for those that don't know, Lucy is the recruiting manager for Hire Military, Tenova LLC, and the Digital Networking Professional Program. So she runs all of our recruiting operations. And she asked me the hardest questions I've ever been asked in an interview when I was interviewing her. So thanks again for that, Lucy. It's a big reason why I was like, we need her.
That inspiration.
Yep. So for those that don't know, Lucy has been in interviews all day today. And
I have, and I have met some awesome people. I think probably the best part about this position is we connect and we network on LinkedIn day in, day out. We see the same names over and over again. But the brilliant part of that is often we see those names become, sit in front of us, become a reality. And today I was able to put 3 of them to faces. And it's just so wonderful to actually have a conversation and get to know them a bit better.
But do you have 3 jobs for all 3 of them?
No, I have 1 job.
So that's the challenge, right? I mean, can you talk to us about that? What it takes out of a recruiter to meet so many wonderful people and know that you can't provide them all jobs?
It's really hard. And, it goes back to what we said about, last week about tailoring resumes. We want you to be as good as you possibly can be because we want to invite you to interview you. We want you rather to make our job incredibly difficult. And so when I do have sit downs and face to faces with people and they blow my mind just in terms of their strategy and their experience and the way that they can interpret my questions and give these answers that are absolutely spot on. And my interviews this week are just screening interviews. They're not situational ones. It makes it incredibly difficult for me, but it just goes to show the caliber of the skill set and the competency out there. And those are people who potentially are going to be coming to join Tenova in a month to 6 weeks time. So, I love every second of it. And, I'm naturally inquisitive or nosy, as some people may say. So I like, getting to know people, asking them random questions, finding out about their military background. So I enjoy it, but it is tiring because you've got to be on all the time.
I love it. So I know, can you really talk again the difference between a screening interview and then, the traditional star format interview?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we have decided to deliver our interview technique and our interview format here is because we are so popular, Mike, we get so many applications. I tend to take each job down to about 12 to 15 candidates, and I have a first screen call with them. I say it's going to be 20 minutes face-to-face, but it always lasts for 30 because we end up having a bit of a chit-chat. And it's more about telling that person about the position that we're recruiting for, bringing that job to life, because as much as I say, you really do need to target your resume and tell us about you, equally, we are putting out a position description out there, which is a 1 or 2 page document that just gives the bare bones. I like to flesh it out, give them more detail to ensure that the candidate really, truly is interested in our role, likes our mission, likes what we're preparing to do, and then can talk me through exactly how they align with the job. So mine aren't situational ones at all. There's no tell me about a time or describe a situation. It's a back and forth about their experience as it stands and compares to the job that we're recruiting for.
And I think it's important to note that's kind of industry standard to do that recruiter phone screen first.
Yes.
To get from 12 to 15 candidates down to 3 to 5, right?
I try and do 5. Often I bump it up to 6. It's really tricky. It's really hard.
That's a good problem to have.
It is a good problem to have.
And I think that speaks a lot to our population. But I remember from my time in the job search to get the recruiter phone screens, a lot of times it was also for the recruiter, they see something in the resume, maybe something's not addressed in the resume, or maybe something they're not sure of in the resume. It's also an opportunity for the recruiter to kind of verify that experience, that feel, and kind of make that final shortlist that goes to the hiring managers, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that, I talk about targeting and aligning your resume, but, you might talk the talk or walk the walk or talk the talk, or whichever way around we are. But I need to hear it from your mouth. I need you to give me that indication and that experience so that I really understand exactly where you've come from. But also going back to that, when people do apply and I don't see exactly, the skill fit or the skill set that we are looking for, I'll go to their LinkedIn profile. And if I see something I like there, I'll make a note of it. And I will do a screen based on both of the applications combined. Equally, harking back to the cover letter that we talked about last week, if you have a stellar cover letter and you tell me exactly why you would be perfect for the role, but your resume has got gaps or anything, I will absolutely reach out and have a call with you because I want to hear it. And right. I think the recruitment process is so defined and structured, and there's often not enough time to be able to really delve deeper, that I can give that to somebody, especially our transitioning service members. Also, this week I've been talking through, they've applied. I can see from their experience that they've got good experience, but they haven't developed it properly on their resume. So I've had conversations about that with people as well, and then asked them to resubmit. So, that's not going to happen in corporate America. It's just people don't have time. But that's part of our commitment to our military affiliated population, that if we have got time, we will do that with them.
And I think there's also a part where that aligns with what we're doing in our direct placement services. Yeah. So providing that same level of support to the community to find the best and the right candidates for the employers we support.
Yes.
Right. So that they don't have the time themselves. Maybe they don't have the knowledge, the understanding of the military community, the veteran community, the military spouse community, but we can do that for them and find them some incredible candidates that are going to love that company, that mission, and that are going to be there for a long time. I didn't want to make this a sales pitch, but it's exciting because, I love what I do every day, and I clearly see that you love what you do every day as well. So we're blessed to be able to do this.
Yeah, we really are. I do love it. And, I've had some great candidates today who've asked me what I love about the role and why I work for Tenova. And, it's interesting to be asked that question because I know why I work for Tenova. I know why I love the role, but it's awesome to be able to share that perspective with people.
So I get the same question sometimes, believe it or not, but it's kind of silly. All right, so we've got the screening interview, and I know we want to keep the time down to the right amount of time. You have an interview, I think, at 3:30, right? So my time. So we've got the screening interview, which is a less structured conversation with a candidate where you're able to explain the role. And they're able to better define how they would be a great fit for the role, with the idea being to decide which ones are going to move forward to the more structured interview, the next phase, right?
That's exactly it.
So what does an interview look like typically in the next phase when you're talking to either panels or hiring managers or executives at the company? What like the typical STAR format interview?
Okay, so that's, you said panel. I think you should always be hyper aware that it is going to be a panel interview, 2 or 3 people. And I think there's a skill and art with positioning yourself and delivering yourself against 3 people, endeavoring to hold eye contact with 3 people, watching their body language as well. So, that's something to be aware of. You're not just talking to the same person the whole time, and listening, because, they only have to listen to one, to you, but you have to interpret all 3 of their perspectives and their interjections. But this is really important. And I say this on most of your posts that you, when we talk about situational interviews, you really need to consider and listen to the question that people are asking. So often I get people, I'll ask a question, tell me about a time when, describe a situation when. What I'm specifically asking for is an example in your career history. It doesn't have to be in a role that's relevant to the one that you're applying, but what the interviewer is looking for is you to be able to extrapolate the competency that they're hoping to define and rate you, to mark you against, and you to be able to really tell a story there. So Google STAR, it will tell you what it means. I've got a great link I can share with people as well after this. But S, set the scene. Where were you? What were you doing? What was your role? Who was with you? Then T is the task in hand. What were you doing? How were you doing it? what were your parameters, etc. A, the action, where did you go? What did you do? You came across this problem, how did you counter it? And then the R is the most important piece. And this is actually where most people come unstuck. They get to stat and, they miss out the R. But in all honesty, if you just had the S and the R, you would answer the question. And the R really is the result. This is coming back. So in that hypothetical, too long didn't read, you didn't give the middle part of the answer. The R really needs to answer the initial question. So the result, how it came about, and what you learned from it. And I think that's really key as well. And that really adds something to your answer. If you give the result and then say, but in the future, if I was in that situation again, this is what I would do, that really delivers a fully well-rounded example and answer.
And, it's kind of funny. I think a lot of service members don't realize that they write evaluations with the A and the R.
Yeah.
I mean, every accomplishment is the action and the result. If you're writing, a good, solid bullet, and all you have to do is say what the problem was on the front end, realistically, and you could explain it that way. Now, you can't possibly have, a star format answer for every question that you imagine. So do you have any advice for people how to really prepare?
Yes, I do. So there's two things. I'll counter that by saying you can find these questions. All you have to do is type into Google the job title and situational questions, and Google will bring up hundreds. So what I suggest is looking at 3 or 4 different links and seeing the ones that overlap, finding the top 5 or 10. But if that is beyond your skill set or you can't do that, take a look at the job description. And read the tasks and responsibilities and go, okay, they're asking for this. Okay, let's think about a time when I've done that. But in reality, there's probably 5 or 6 that are generic across the board. And we actually have these 5 or 6 in our battery of questions that we administer. But one of them is, for example, tell us about a time when you've had to, when you've been in a situation where you disagreed with your manager. That comes up a lot. So to be able to prepare for that is really key. And again, I can share a couple of those. They're all over the internet, but we can give you the 5 or 6 that are the most common ones. And
I think, but for someone preparing, obviously that's one great way to do it. I think another way that we could prepare is by having at least 5, 6, 7 like good accomplishments from our careers that we've actually practiced telling that story. And if it is something that you're comfortable already talking about, explaining a situation, then all you have to do is tweak it sometimes a little bit to more align with the question, and makes it seem natural.
That's exactly it. Like, especially in the days of video conferencing and video interviews, I always suggest to people, have the examples on your keyboard. Nobody can see it. Because if you glance down quickly and then look up again, that's okay. But equally, another top tip that I always advise people is, if you are fully prepared, as soon as that question is being asked, you're ready to, you're chomping at the bit to deliver it because you've got your answer ready to go. But it's really key to take a breath and give yourself 5 seconds to wait and respond, because what you are actually doing is buying yourself time for the question later on in the interview that you haven't prepared. And you have to take the time to think, because what that will then do is deliver a consistency across your interview, that you're delivering in the same measured approach, rather than, throwing out the ones that you've prepared and then like being all startled when you don't have an answer ready and waiting to go. So, I mean, that just is, advice.
I actually had an interview from an editor for a publication last week, and I just drank a big cup of coffee prior to the meeting, and she asked me questions. I was like, boom. And then like 3/4 of the way through the question, I'm like, oh, wait, there could be a different answer. And I was just all over the place. And I apologized to her at the end. I'm like, I really just vomited stuff at you. I hope you can make some sense of it. And she was gracious, but it was not my best effort. I came out of there and was like, we had some tech issues in the beginning and everything, so it just kind of threw me off my game. But I think it's practice is key, right?
Talk about the tech issues actually, because we have tech issues in most interviews that I deliver at the moment. And, in terms of, when I say tech, they may be child issues as well, but, children running into the interview, sorry. But, that's standard practice these days. So I want people to be aware that if that happens, don't let that take your mind off of your answer, or don't let that worry you, because people are used to that these days.
Yeah. No. And it's okay to take a deep breath.
Yeah, it is.
So I want to share something real quick. Let me see if I can share my screen. I just want to share this real quick so people can see. Oh, there it goes. So just in case people don't know, there's another great tool on LinkedIn. If you go to jobs and then you come over here to interview prep, you've got these 26 common questions, interview questions. You've got some additional ones up here, different categories that you can search through. But here's the exciting part. Not only do they give you examples on how to answer it, some tips, you can actually come over here to practice, and you can record yourself actually answering one of these questions, like tell me about yourself, or tell me about a time in, or whatever. And when you've done and found one you liked, you can go to your answers and you can actually share. Here's one of my answers, and I want to request feedback and say I wanted to send this to Lucy. I can actually send Lucy a link to my video that she could watch and actually, give me live feedback, but also let me see how I sound, how my writing is, if there's any distracting in the background. I love to share that tool. I think I might have shared it the last time we chatted, but I think it's an unused tool, or not used the way it should be.
I think it's amazing. I'm wondering now if I'm going to get an inbox full of videos. I don't mind, but it may take a bit of time to get back to you. But actually, I know a lot of corporations and businesses that utilize LinkedIn for inspiration when it comes to interview questions. And so therefore, if you take a look at those questions there, they are going to be generic ones as well that will be really useful.
Yeah. And ideally I do not recommend you send these to recruiters. I'm also not a big fan of the video recorded things, because those can go wrong sideways fast. I'd rather someone get to the interview when they already have the impression that you already meet all the qualifications. But I think those are fantastic to send to mentors and ask for help.
Yeah, so I agree.
So speaking of asking for help, we had a question last week, and I think we've got about maybe 2, 3, 4 more minutes. Okay. We had somebody that said they've been to more than 15 interviews with no next step. What should they do?
They really need to engage with a mentor, or more specifically a career counselor. Mm-hmm. Feedback? Oh, no, a career counselor, because they really need to have interview practice.
Yeah.
I interview a lot of people right now, and we don't always have time to give in-depth feedback, but a lot of it is not listening to the question and not answering it fully. So really taking the time to investigate and research the STAR approach, and then Googling questions that may come up really will set you in good stead. And I think going back to something that you put up on the screen earlier, that question, tell me a bit about yourself. And I always say to people, reposition that. When somebody asks you that, they're not actually asking about you and your background and, your family and your pets and where you've come from. What they actually want to know is how you align with the position that they're recruiting for. So everything that you're pulling out, the detail that you're giving, needs to be relevant and pertinent to the role to which you're applying. And just by doing that is going to turn the interview on its head, because in reality, I know in the first 2 minutes whether that person is going to progress to the next stage. I get it immediately. It's a gut feeling, as well as how they deliver themselves when they answer that first question. And just penning that one down is going to deliver success to move forward.
No, I love it. So I'm a rip the Band-Aid guy, off kind of guy. I have seen situations, not where they've applied for my company, but like a year or two ago where someone said, I keep getting interviews and I never get forward. And they sent me their resume and I said, it is 100% clear that you did not write this resume. So what happened is you paid someone to write a really, really, really amazing resume for you that really hyped up your abilities, your experience, your accomplishments. Maybe not even some of them were not your accomplishments.
Yeah.
And then you got to the interview and you were not that person.
And that's just it. You know, you need to be able to talk through your experience, and it's immediately obvious if you can't, because nobody knows your history and your background better than you. You should be the master of that story.
Right. I agree 100%. And then the other question was, you know, people that have submitted 50, 75, 100 resumes and not hear anything back. And I basically tell them the same thing. You know, the whole "it's not me, it's you" thing. No, it's you.
Yeah.
You know, if you submit, let's be honest, how much time is involved in submitting 100 tailored resumes? If you're doing it right, you know, you're talking maybe 1 hour, maybe 2 hours per resume. That's a lot of time and effort. So a lot of times they're submitting the same resume, basically, just ZipRecruiter style. Just submit, submit, submit.
Never submit those ZipRecruiter or Indeed ones. Also, that is a top tip. We get lots of those through, and I just ignore those ones immediately because they're a 10-page document.
Oh.
Yes, exactly. I think there's a couple of things there. Make sure you know not to submit a federal resume, because that really ticks me off when I get a federal resume when it's 10 pages long. I've only got time to read 1 page, let alone 2. But equally, you know, we're just going to flog this horse, aren't we, until we're beat. But target your resume, read the job description, and make sure that I know from your resume why you've applied. Don't assume that I know you and I know your version of you. I need to see you demonstrate your experience as I've written it in the position description. So essentially, pick up my copy and place it authentically and with integrity and where it sits nicely in your resume.
I love it. I love it. So, you know, you can't apply to as many jobs if you do it right.
But you don't need to.
Right. But you don't need to. And do you ever see a situation where you interview somebody for a role and they don't get that role, but because you can tell they put as much effort and heart, you know, into applying, that there's another role for them down the road?
Do I ever? Yes. Our next recruit here at Tenova is one of those people. So absolutely, if you have committed to us and you have made that effort, and I see a great personality and a great culture add in you, but you're not quite suitable for that role, I'm going to pick up the phone and consider you for the next position I've got, because, you know, I liked you. I want you to come and work with us. I think that you've got an awful lot to add. But equally, like we said at the very beginning, we're getting a huge amount of candidates come through, and some of them are of a fantastic caliber. So we can't give a job to everybody, even though we want to.
But we'll keep working on it.
And we will try.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Lucy. I know you've got an interview in a few minutes. I want to give you a chance to go to the bathroom and get a drink before that.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And Lucy and I are going to try to make this a weekly event. That means there'll be one in a few weeks from the Outer Banks somewhere on our big offsite, which we're excited for. But we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, everyone.